When people think of the Vedas, they imagine serenity, divine chants echoing in sacred temples, the sound of priests reciting hymns that promise cosmic harmony and eternal wisdom. But what if I told you that hidden inside these same texts is something much darker? Something the sages themselves may have feared. The demons of the Vedas, the Asuras and the Rakshasas, forces that are almost never spoken about openly, because to speak their names is to remember a time when chaos walked beside men and gods alike. Tonight, we open the book of Vedic Demonology, the forbidden history they never told you about. And once you hear it, you'll never see the Vedas the same way again. The Vedas, the oldest scriptures of India, are revered as divine knowledge revealed to ancient seers, hymns of creation, the cosmic order, the praise of gods like Indra, Agni, Varuna, and Soma. But scattered among these hymns are passages that speak of enemies of the gods, forces who opposed the Devas at every turn, beings who were not mindless monsters, but powerful rulers, philosophers, and warriors in their own right. And yet history chose to remember them only as demons, the Asuras. In the earliest layers of the Rigveda, Asura did not even mean demon. It meant lord, mighty one, even divine being. Varuna himself, the great overseer of cosmic law, was once called Asura. But something changed. As the Devas grew stronger in the hymns, the Asuras grew darker, twisted into enemies, rebels, adversaries of the cosmic order. The Rigveda describes a war not just in heaven, but across realms, where gods battled Asuras for control of creation itself. Imagine that. Even in the most sacred scripture, the world begins not with peace, but with bloodshed between gods and their own kin. The Vedas don't shy away from that violence. They describe Indra, king of the gods, as a warrior who slays Asuras with his thunderbolt, who splits open their strongholds, who unleashes rivers of blood. One hymn praises Indra for killing Shambhara, an Asura with 99 fortresses. Another celebrates his destruction of Vritra, the serpent dragon who held back the waters of the world. But let's stop here for a moment, because what's fascinating is how these demons are described. They weren't just monsters. The Asuras were builders, thinkers, beings who created fortresses, who used magic and knowledge, who ruled entire worlds. They weren't stupid. They were terrifying, precisely because they were like the gods themselves. Think about that. The first demons weren't chaotic beasts. They were rival gods, equals in power, driven by ambition and defiance. The Vedas paint them as proud, jealous, hungry for power. And yet, isn't that exactly how the Devas are too? Indra isn't some humble saint. He's a thunderbolt-wielding king drunk on Soma, praised for his killing sprees. So what really separates the gods from the demons? Maybe nothing at all. And then from the shadows of these myths emerge the Rakshasas, darker still, less philosophical than the Asuras, more visceral, more terrifying. The Rigveda barely whispers of them, calling them man-eaters, night-stalkers, beings who lurked in forests, waiting to prey on wandering men. And the Rakshasas were shapeshifters, capable of taking forms both beautiful and hideous, seducing or terrifying their victims before feeding on them. And unlike the Asuras, who fought gods in the heavens, the Rakshasas lived closer to humans. They were the nightmare in the dark, the shadow at the edge of the campfire, the red eyes in the jungle.
And they have haunted Indian mythology ever since. By the time of the Ramayana, Rakshasas are described in gruesome detail. Cannibals who drink human blood, demons who desecrate sacred rituals, monstrous kings like Ravana who dared to steal Sita from Rama and plunge the world into war. But even in these later epics, you can still feel the Vedic roots. The sense that Rakshasas are not just monsters, but something more symbolic. They represent chaos, hunger, desire unchained. Now, here's where things get chilling. Because if you read the Vedas carefully, the line between gods, Asuras, and Rakshasas is paper thin. The Devas needed sacrifices, praise, and offerings to stay strong. The Asuras too demanded worship. The Rakshasas feasted on flesh. All three were dependent on mortals. And that is the secret most people don't talk about. The gods and the demons were more alike than we want to believe. Imagine being an ancient priest, living in fear of the forest outside your village, whispering hymns to keep away the Rakshasas who might devour you at night, while at the same time pouring soma into the fire to keep Indra from abandoning your people. Gods above, demons beyond, Rakshasas in the shadows. Every corner of existence demanded something from you. Every force hungered. And the Vedas preserved that fear. One hymn even warns priests to guard their sacrifices carefully, lest Rakshasas steal them. Another describes spells to drive away Rakshasas that creep close during rituals, which means even the act of worship itself was under siege. The demons were never far away. And then there are the strange contradictions. The Asuras, though demonized, were not always evil. In Iranian tradition, the word Asura, same as Asura, means Lord of Truth. Ahura Mazda became the supreme god of Zoroastrianism. So, here's the paradox. In India, Asuras became demons. In Persia, Asuras became gods. Who's telling the truth? Or is this the ultimate evidence that gods and demons are only masks, that the line between them is drawn not by morality, but by perspective? If that's true, then what are we worshipping? The Vedas describe the Asuras not only as enemies, but as beings who performed sacrifices of their own, who had priests, who had knowledge of rituals. Imagine that. Rival gods performing mirror sacrifices, chanting mirror hymns, fueling mirror fires, all to overthrow the Devas. It's chilling to realize the ancients saw creation itself as contested territory, with no guarantee of safety, no single truth, just a war of gods and demons and humanity caught in the middle. The Rakshasas, too, were said to perform their own twisted versions of rituals, but instead of ghee and soma, they offered human blood. Ritual against ritual, sacrifice against sacrifice, the very act of worship became a battlefield. And maybe that's why later priests demonized them so harshly, because to admit that demons also prayed was too dangerous, too destabilizing. Better to call them monsters, cannibals, shadows of the night. But the truth? The truth is that in the earliest myths there was no clean separation. Only war, only hunger, only blood. Asuras and Rakshasas were reminders that divinity itself was unstable, dangerous, always at risk of falling into darkness. And here's the haunting part. The Vedas describe cycles of time, ages of decline where demons rise again, where humans lose their strength, where chaos floods back into the world. Maybe we are living in one of those ages now. Look around. Hunger, violence, greed, shadows rising again. The Rakshasas were never banished. They just learned to wear human faces. And the Asuras, perhaps they never died at all. Perhaps they are still watching, waiting for the age when the Devas grow weak again, when their hymns can be heard in the silence of the night. Perhaps the Vedic war never ended, and we are standing in the middle of it without even realizing it.
But if you thought the Asuras and Rakshasas were only vague shadows, let me take you deeper. Let me show you their faces. Because the Vedas and epics do not just speak of demons in general. They give them names, stories, legacies. And some of those names still echo with dread to this day. One of the first and most terrifying was Vritra, the serpent Asura, the great dragon of drought, who coiled his body around the cosmic waters and refused to let them flow. The hymns describe him as immense, dark, suffocating, a cosmic strangler who starved the earth of rivers and rains. Indra, the king of the gods, rose to face him, and with his thunderbolt he shattered Vritra's body, releasing the waters that became the lifeblood of the world. But think about that story. Vritra was not just a monster. He was the embodiment of drought, of hoarded power, of strangled abundance. He represents every tyrant who locks away resources, every shadow that withholds life from others. And Indra's victory was not just a myth. It was a desperate prayer of people terrified of famine. Suddenly, the gods and demons don't feel so far away, do they? They feel human. They feel like reflections of our fears. Then there was Shambhara, another great Asura. His legend is fascinating. 99 fortresses, 99 strongholds, each built with cunning, each meant to withstand the assault of gods. 99 fortresses. Imagine that. A being so obsessed with power, so paranoid of losing it, that he builds layer after layer of protection around himself. But Indra still found him. Indra destroyed Shambhara's fortresses one by one, until nothing remained. Isn't that the perfect image of how fear drives us? We build walls around our lives, defenses against the inevitable. But no matter how many we build, death, time, the thunderbolt, it all breaks through. That's why Shambhara's story is more than a myth. It's a warning. And yet, not all Asuras were mindless tyrants. Some were thinkers. Some were teachers. Take Namuchi, an Asura who was bound by a strange pact. Indra swore not to kill him with anything dry or wet, nor by day nor by night. Sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? But Indra, ever the trickster, found the loophole. At twilight, neither day nor night, he used the foam of water, neither dry nor wet, and slit Namuchi's throat. God of righteousness indeed. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how often the so-called gods survive not through virtue, but through loopholes and betrayal. And if the gods used deceit, what then truly separates them from the demons? Then there's Mahishasura, the buffalo demon, a name that still echoes in festivals across India. His legend is terrifying, a shapeshifter who could take the form of a man, a demon, a beast, wielding unstoppable strength. None of the male gods could defeat him. He crushed armies, defied the heavens, cast terror across the worlds. And so the gods did something unthinkable. They combined their powers, and from their collective rage and desperation was born a goddess. Durga, the slayer of Mahishasura. Armed with weapons gifted by every god, riding a lion, Durga descended upon Mahishasura and fought him in a battle that raged for 9 nights. On the 10th, she struck him down. To this day, Hindus celebrate that victory in the festival of Navaratri. But look deeper. Mahishasura was not just a monster. He was pride, arrogance, the brute force of nature untamed. And Durga was not merely a goddess. She was divine wrath, the reminder that sometimes only the feminine, the unyielding mother, can crush the beast that men cannot. That story reveals something chilling. Even the gods admitted their failure. They needed something beyond themselves to face the demon. And then there is Ravana. Ravana, the Rakshasa king of Lanka, one of the most complicated villains in all mythology. We all know the Ramayana, how Ravana abducted Sita, how Rama waged war to rescue her, how Ravana was finally slain. But here's the twist. Ravana was no ordinary demon. He was a scholar, a master of the Vedas, a devotee of Shiva himself. The stories say his knowledge was so vast, his power so immense, that even the gods trembled at his rise. He performed penances so severe, sacrifices so brutal, that Shiva granted him boons no god could match. This was no mere monster. This was a man who touched divinity and fell. That is what makes Ravana terrifying. He is not a beast in the dark. He is the genius who chooses pride over humility, who lets obsession consume him. Sound familiar? How many geniuses in our own world burn down everything around them for pride? Ravana represents something we all fear, the brilliance of the human mind, twisted by ego until it becomes monstrous. The Rakshasas, through him, show us that demons don't always come with fangs and claws. Sometimes they come with knowledge, with charisma, with music and art and beauty, but beneath it all, a hunger for domination. That's the scariest kind of demon, isn't it? The one that doesn't look like one. The one that charms you, teaches you, even inspires you, before devouring you whole. And here's where the Vedic vision takes a darker turn, because Asuras and Rakshasas were not just villains to be destroyed. They were essential to the cosmic order. Without Vritra, there would be no waters to release. Without Mahishasura, there would be no Durga. Without Ravana, Rama's story has no meaning. The demons gave purpose to the gods. Think about that. Without the shadow, the light is meaningless. So, who's really in control here? The gods who destroy, or the demons who make them necessary? And if we dare to go deeper, we find that in the occult traditions, the Asuras and Rakshasas are not gone. They are invoked, feared, worshipped. Some tantric sects whisper prayers not to the Devas, but to the very demons the Vedas condemned. Why? Because demons represent power unchained, knowledge forbidden, forces too dangerous for the mainstream, but irresistible for those who want control.
Imagine a world where the Asuras were not banished, but merely waiting, gathering strength from every act of greed, every ritual of hate, every blood offering in the shadows. Imagine Rakshasas feeding not on bodies in the forest, but on the corruption of cities, the endless hunger of society itself. Look around you. Do you not see the hunger of Rakshasas in the corporations that consume lives for profit? Do you not see the arrogance of Asuras in the rulers who build their 99 fortresses of wealth, believing they can never fall? The Vedic demons are not gone. They are here, wearing human faces. And here's the terrifying truth the Vedas hinted at. Sometimes the demons win. The texts admit it. There were ages when Asuras ruled, when Rakshasas spread unchecked, when gods themselves were pushed into exile. This cycle was never stable. It was war, endless war, which means victory is never final. And here we are, in an age that feels all too much like the demons are rising again. Drought, greed, pride, endless hunger. Vritra, Shambhara, Mahishasura, Ravana. Their names live on not as corpses of old myths, but as symbols of eternal forces. And maybe, just maybe, the ancients were warning us that these demons are not just myth, but archetypes, patterns. That every time a leader hoards power, every time a genius twists knowledge into destruction, every time hunger and greed consume the world, a Rakshasa rises, an Asura takes shape. And if that is true, then we are not safe. Not now, not ever. The war between gods and demons was not a story of the past. It was prophecy. And perhaps the most terrifying part of all is realizing which side we've already chosen. And now we arrive at the most forbidden part of the story. The part most priests, most scholars would rather you never hear. Because it is one thing to describe Asuras and Rakshasas as enemies of the gods, as villains in sacred epics, as monsters conquered in the past. That's safe. That's comfortable. But the real terror begins when you realize some traditions did not see them as monsters at all. Some saw them as teachers. Yes, teachers. Imagine that, the very beings condemned in the Vedas, worshipped in secret, invoked in rituals, whispered to in the dark. This is where mythology bleeds into the occult. In the shadows of India's vast spiritual landscape, certain tantric sects deliberately turned to the figures of demons, not the gods, for their power. They believed the Devas represented order, structure, the chains of morality. But the Asuras and Rakshasas? They represented freedom, raw, untamed power, forbidden knowledge, the fuel for transformation. There are stories of yogis meditating not on Indra or Vishnu, but on Ravana,
on Mahishasura, on the forms of Bhairava that bordered on the demonic. Why? Because they believed that true enlightenment required not ignoring the shadow, but embracing it. Think about that. The same Rakshasas who haunted villages, the same Asuras who waged war on the gods. Some saw them not as curses, but as paths to liberation. And isn't that terrifying? That the line between worship and blasphemy is so thin it disappears in the flicker of a flame? There are mantras still preserved in obscure texts that call upon the Rakshasas for protection, that summon Asuric power for wealth, strength, and domination. Rituals soaked not in ghee, but in blood. And here is the unsettling truth. Not all of those rituals are dead. Some are still whispered. Some are still practiced in hidden temples, in forests, in private chambers where no sunlight reaches. Even now, there are those who call upon the Vedic demons for help. And you may ask, why? Why would anyone choose the demons? Because the demons offer what the gods never do: immediate power, control, freedom from morality. The Devas ask for humility. The Asuras promise glory. The Rakshasas promise hunger satisfied. And for those who cannot wait for heaven, who do not care for cosmic order, the demons remain tempting allies. Perhaps that is why the Vedas warned so strongly against them, not because they were unreal, but because they were all too real, because people would always be tempted to listen. And who can resist? Imagine a whisper in the night promising you power beyond kings. Would you say no? Or would you, like so many before you, light the forbidden fire? But let us go even deeper, beyond the rituals, beyond the sects, into the human mind itself. Because the most disturbing interpretation is this: the Asuras and Rakshasas were never external beings at all. They were archetypes, forces of the psyche, demons inside us. When the Vedas spoke of Vritra strangling the waters, they were speaking of our own fear, our own hoarding, our own refusal to let life flow. When they spoke of Shambhara building 99 fortresses, they described our obsession with walls, masks, protections that never save us. When they spoke of Mahishasura's shape-shifting, they described our egos, slippery, always changing shape to survive. And when they spoke of Rakshasas feasting on human flesh, they described our appetites, endless, ravenous, never satisfied. Look within. You will find them. The Asura and Rakshasa are not out there. They are here. They are you. They are me. They are the parts of us we tried to deny, but can never escape. And maybe not to scare children, but to remind us that divinity itself is a battlefield between the light and the shadow within. You cannot destroy the Asura. You cannot kill the Rakshasa. You can only confront them or become them. And here is where the modern world makes the myth more terrifying than ever. Because look around. We are not living in a time of gods. We are living in an age of demons. Don't believe me? Let's count. Vritra, the hoarder of waters. Do we not see droughts caused by greed, rivers strangled by pollution, corporations damming the lifeblood of the earth? That is Vritra, alive again. Shambhara, the builder of fortresses. Do you not see leaders hoarding wealth, building their 99 palaces of glass and steel, thinking themselves untouchable? That is Shambhara reborn. Mahishasura, the brute force of arrogance. Do you not see his reflection in every tyrant, every dictator who crushes armies with sheer will, who laughs at morality, who bends nations to their will? That is Mahishasura walking among us. And Ravana? Ravana lives in every genius corrupted by ego, every brilliant mind that turns knowledge into weapons, every artist who chooses pride over truth until destruction follows. We are surrounded by them. We are ruled by them, and worse, maybe we are becoming them. Isn't that the final joke? The Vedas warned of demons out there, but the real demons were always in us. We hoard, we hunger, we rage, we deceive. We are the Rakshasas. We are the Asuras. And once you realize that, there is no going back. Because the final secret of Vedic demonology is this: the war never ended, because it was never about gods versus demons at all. It was about us. The battlefield was always the human soul. Every time you choose greed over compassion, a Rakshasa wins. Every time you choose pride over humility, an Asura rises. Every time you let fear strangle you, Vritra coils around you again. The gods may be symbols of order, but the demons are symbols of us. And maybe that is why we fear them so much, because deep down we know we need them. Without the Asura, there is no Deva. Without the Rakshasa, there is no saint. Without the shadow, there is no light. And that means the demons will never die. They live as long as we do. The Vedas were not describing a past world. They were describing this one, our world, our age. And perhaps the scariest thought of all is this: maybe the Rakshasas don't even need to stalk the forests anymore, because they already live inside you.